Hey everybody, how's it going? Much love. Making this response video to Vice's latest Latinx video regarding Miami's right wing. This is where correspondent Paola Ramos goes to Miami and meets with the Proud Boys, actually with the leader of the Proud Boys, which happens to be a descendant of black Cubans. And I have a couple of bones to pick with the way it was done. I've seen other episodes of this series, and I actually enjoyed the back and forth between the different types of Latin conservatives and Latin progressives, etc. And it was mostly impartial, I gotta say. The way that Paola, asked the questions and everything, and let everyone speak, it was pretty great. This time, it was a little bit weird, and especially weird because she is Cuban Mexican American, and in the beginning of the video, she says that many people in America lump all Latin people together into some sort of amorphous blob or whatever. But in reality, we have very different opinions, and it depends on the country that you come from. Apart from other cultural things, let's say, your color of your skin, etc., also counts. But then she comes down to Miami, her being Cuban and Mexican, and it seems like she doesn't know that there's a difference. There's a difference between the reason why Cubans and Venezuelans and Nicaraguans back in the day came to America, and why Central Americans, are trying to cross the border, right? She should know, as having Cuban ancestry, that in Cuba there's a communist dictatorship, right? And she mentions in the video, yes, in part because of this is why the Cuban community in Miami is very conservative and very Republican. And yet she's surprised when the leader of the Proud Boys, this black Cuban guy, sees a difference or differentiates himself from the people at the border, right? The Central Americans running away from gang violence, from maybe some other type of hardship, economic hardship, etc. And she doesn't see that he doesn't have the same type of empathy that he would have towards Venezuelans, that he would have or does not have towards people coming from Honduras or El Salvador, Mexico, etc. Right? But you just said in the beginning of the video that Latin people are different, right? So why are you surprised, condescending, a white Latin lady, white Cuban lady, or Latin, non-binary Latinx white person that has Cuban ancestry, that has also the Mexican novela look, right? It surprises her that a black Cuban guy is conservative. Then she goes speak with this Latin professor at FIU, who says, also white, and also white Latin professor, that says that a lot of, or these conservative black Latinos, by not sympathizing or agreeing with the plight of the Central American immigrants, they are fighting against their own interests. That's in the video. And I wonder, these two white people, in the Latin context, are basically dismissing a black Latin person's point of view. He couldn't possibly be conservative. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't have the autonomy to just think differently. It's strange. Now, for those of you that don't know, there is a difference between people that in the 80s came from Nicaragua because of the socialism that to this day still persists. The president today and his family control Nicaragua and repress the people and kill them and jail them, etc. And also now Venezuela with Hugo Chavez and now Maduro, with the help of Cubans, of course. And of course the Cuban government since the 50s have been, oppressing their people. The thousands of Cubans have died trying to cross the Caribbean Sea to make it to Florida or to make it to Mexico or Puerto Rico or another island, the Bahamas. There are plenty Cubans stranded in Central America and Mexico right now. Just maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, some Cubans died in El Darien, which is it's a jungle in Panama. A river, suddenly flooded and drowned a whole bunch of people, families, kids, old people. But the plight of those migrants, for some reason, excuse me, is not talked about, right? The plight of the Venezuelan people, millions that have left Venezuela, gone to Trinidad and Tobago, neighboring Colombia, of course Doral in Miami, Florida, even here in Atlanta, I found some Venezuelans. Before I found Cubans, I found Venezuelans here. These people, they left their country because of socialism. Are you surprised? Are you surprised that when we see the current state of affairs in America, right? The fact that there seems to be a push by the media, by educational institutions, by the Democratic Party. Anywhere you look, there seems to be a push towards socialism. And in the video, she mentions, but there, it's different because this is just an expansion of welfare in a capitalist context. Okay. But the more power that you give government, or the more responsibility that you give government, the more power they have over you. So the way that we see it, as people having come from, these places where socialism took over, communism took over, is that maybe you will not have a violent revolution or upheaval from one day to the other and suddenly you'll be a communist state. But we see that you're taking steps to get there, right? And that's what happened with Venezuela. At the end, it was sort of like an exponential socialist curve. In America, because we have traditions and we have the Constitution, etc., it's gonna take a bit longer. But we do see that the left is chipping away at capitalism. Now there's something wrong with capitalism. Now there's we need to fix it. There's we're doing it wrong. Maybe we don't really need capitalism. Maybe we need some sort of enlightened capitalism or something like this. Um, but getting back to the video, it just it seems a bit careless. It seemed a bit careless, dismissive of the experience of the actual conservative or the people that have actually died and suffered under these regimes and have come to America and love America. And it seems dismissive of their concerns that what they escaped is being brought over here. Now, when it comes to, and this, what I'm about to say next, does not only concern or does not only apply to people coming from Central America. It basically applies to any immigrant and even to Cubans, and that is a lot of people come from dysfunctional countries running away from symptoms of socialism, right? Like just go down all of Central and South America and any Latin country, there's definitely ridiculous amounts of government overreach and ineptitude. But they don't, in their minds, a lot of them have not worked out the cause, right? So they have the symptoms, they're running away from the symptoms. Ouch, the stove is hot, it burns, I'm taking my hand away, I'm moving to America. But they haven't worked out, oh, stoves are hot. They're just, ouch, it's hot. No, it's like you turned it on, you left it on, and you put your hand on it. And that is the same thing that happens with a lot of migrants, that until they have felt it the way that Cubans and Venezuelans have felt socialism, they don't realize that, Mexicans or Central Americans, like Salvadorans, Hondurans, they don't realize that they're running away from what socialism has done to their countries, right? If you have a lot of government overreach, even though it's not, red and black, pure communism, you still have a lot of corruption because a lot of politicians have the power to give special, to give privileges to their buddies in their companies, and they privatize companies and then give them or auction them to only a special group of people, and then the average person is screwed, and they raise taxes and they pass all these regulations, so it's really hard to start business, and then they don't pay the police enough because they're stealing the money. But this is all different levels of socialism, right? But they come over here and they just say, oh my God, my hand is not burning anymore. My hand was burning over there, now it's not burning here. Let me keep doing what I've been doing and thinking the same way I've been thinking, except that now I'm safe. Now the streets are clean, miraculously. Now, I can have my own business and say anything I want on social media and dress however I want and work 12, 14 hours, washing dishes or picking, fruit or whatever, but I'm feeding my family, but still want government to take care of me and give me welfare or whatever, right? It's one type. Cubans do this too. Cubans just come over. Cubans are kind of cowardly because they come over and they don't talk about why they leave. They don't say, I'm leaving because Cuba is a dictatorship, because they also want to go back to Cuba and visit their family and bring them gifts and wear gold chains and, sell them a dream and then come back and then work, at Taco Bell or whatever. Um, the other thing is that in these other countries, you can say your piece. You have actual elections. In Cuba and Venezuela, you don't have democratic elections anymore. In Cuba, you haven't had democratic elections for 6 decades. In Venezuela, um, well, probably in a decade, right? The Venezuelans got themselves into this, like the Cubans did back in the day. We welcomed Fidel, but it was a revolution. In Venezuela, they elected Chavez, but now it has gotten to a point where elections don't matter anymore. So it's blatant dictatorship. But that is not the same thing as you living in Mexico, and your country has triple the homicide rate that the United States has, and people get disemboweled sometimes, and women disappear in border towns because, I don't know, some narcos or whatever, just like to rape and kill women and bury them or whatever. Um, these problems and the gangs and everything, these problems that these Central American countries have are not the same political problems as Cuba and Venezuela has, right? You can protest in Mexico. You can protest in El Salvador. Nicaragua, not so much. But you can protest in all these other countries, right? But not in Cuba, not in Venezuela. There is political persecution. There is expropriation. There is everything. Your typical dictatorship. Okay. So it's not fair. It's not. It's really disingenuous to ascribe racist. They called. The professor said that they were racist. They were bringing a racial element into that because they were disagreeing with. They were separating these conservative Latinos are separating themselves from the Central American Latinos based on race, right? Based on the color of their skin, because Central Americans are brown. In your video, you have a black Cuban, and the professor mentions, but these conservatives, they discriminate like Afro Caribbeans. Like, you have a black Cuba is in the Caribbean. You have a black Cuban, the leader of the Proud Boys, trying to explain to a white boy that they're not the same color. That it's crazy. I don't know, man. I mean, I understand that Vice leans left, but come on, Paola, you're Mexican and you're Cuban. You know that it's different experiences. You know this. You have things in Mexico. You can buy things. There's no food in Cuba. I mean, it's really tough. Okay, and you can't protest. In Mexico, the indigenous people protest. Everybody protests. In Cuba, you cannot. Black people cannot protest. The other day, gay people tried to protest. That's right, your Latinx people tried to protest. They were shut down. Quick. We don't hear you talking about that. Yeah. I understand you have an agenda, but I just wanted to let the people know that there is a difference between escaping a dictatorship where you don't have freedom of speech, where you don't have private property, where you have to live with your parents and your grandparents because there's no real estate market, where you are a college professor that gets paid $40 a month because the government taxes you at a 90% rate, and you have 3 children and you have to feed them somehow, so you have to steal. Everyone steals. Where your neighbor will rat you out to the police when you have too much food because you didn't get it with the with your CBT card, the equivalent, right? You didn't get it with the dole. It's not enough for you to have that much meat in your fridge. And so the police come and they say this is illicit meat. You're taking food away from the out of the mouths of the children of the revolution, and then they confiscate not only the meat but your fridge, and then you go to jail for like 10 years or something. I've had people in my family go to jail for, what was it? How long was he there for? Like 8 years because he illegally like killed a state cow and sold it, right? It is very different from Mexico. Just having, maybe being a poor indigenous person that has experienced a lot of gang violence, so you don't see a future for you or your kids, and you want to come to a better place, which is America, which is great. I understand that. It is very different. You should know this. You should know, as a Latinx person, what Che Guevara did to the gay people in Cuba. He put them in a concentration camp. Okay? I don't get it. It's not right. Those are my 2 cents. Thank you.